So my friends, the topic is spiritual companionship, which the Sufi mystics describe as really having in your life a circle of love. You know, it is said that even prophets sought companions. For me, the most wonderful phrases that splash in my heart are the ones which some of you heard again and again. A wall standing alone is useless. Add to it other walls, it can support a roof, even a granary. Only when ink joins with a pen can the blank paper say something. So we all need this sacred circle of love, you know, for the sake of safety, feeling nourished, feeling nurtured. And there comes a time when we want to have more meaning in life. I think it's symbolized for me by that wonderful saying by the 9th century beloved female Saint Rabia, who cried out, there is a disease in my breast. There is a disease in my breast no doctor can cure. Only union with that friend can cure that. You know, a sense of restlessness. I want to be freed. I want to be surrendered. That other wonderful saying, so for example, I'll modify it. Here I am in Seattle. Here I am in Seattle, and yet my heart longs for Seattle. What is it I want? So in the past, this kind of spiritual companionship was usually between a teacher and a student. And there was some hierarchy there, a necessary hierarchy, where to be able to really connect with our higher self so we can feel freed, to have meaning in life, to have what Buddhists would call equanimity, what Muslims would call being surrendered to God, what Christians would call to be saved, we have to do the inner work, which is very difficult, very inconvenient. So usually you would seek a teacher who had a degree of enlightenment, and you'd ask to be his or her student. And this is the work of really, the work of transforming the ego, which Sufis describe as, can you transform the ego from a commanding master into a personal assistant? And there's a work of opening up the heart. You know, Rumi has this wonderful saying, what this work involves. It's not easy, it's difficult. He says, take a pickaxe and break open your stony heart. Take a pickaxe and break open your stony heart. The heart's matrix is glutted with rubies. Springs of laughter are buried in your chest. This is intensive work. You know, Rumi, he utters, you know, I was raw. I became cooked. Then I burnt and burnt and burnt. That 14th century Hafiz, you know, who found this teacher in this very well-known master, Fariduddin Attar, it was a very difficult journey of transforming the ego and opening up the heart. But he puts it in a more gentle metaphor. He says it's like a dance, you know, dance with God, dance with your spiritual teacher. And he says, you know, our partner is notoriously difficult to follow. And even some of his best musicians are very, very hard to hear. So the journey can be intensive and it can be long. And in those days, the teachers would insist, you cannot shorten it. So there are stories in several traditions of the student who's ambitious, who's eager to become a teacher for prestige, for fame, for renown. He tells the teacher, how long will it take? The teacher says 10 years. And the student says, what if I work twice as hard as other people do? And the teacher said, 15 years. Well, what if I work 3 times as hard? Well, that'll take 20 years. The student says, how come when I am committing myself to work harder, it takes longer? Teacher says that's because when you're on this path of self-discovery, of opening up your heart, if one of your eyes is attached to the prestige and the titles and the fame, you have only one eye left to find your way on the path. This path requires both your eyes to be on the road. You have to be really present. So the work is, from past experiences of students, the work is intensive, the work is long, and there are all kinds of different tests. For example, I remember reading about a Zen master who was giving a final test to the Zen student to become a teacher. And in the final test, it was a rainy day and the student came and the student put his umbrella next to his sandals. And the only question the teacher asked was, did you place your umbrella to the right of your sandals or to the left of your sandals? And when he couldn't answer, he had to study for a few more years. And when he was asked if he was being picky, being trivial, he said, no, it's not a question of being picky. It's a question of mindfulness. This is what spirituality is about. You have to be mindful of little things and big things. In a test or ordination of a Sufi master with a student, the only question the teacher asked was of the student, have you ever been in love? And the student had not. And the teacher said, go back, fall in love, and then come back after you have been in love. Because if you have not been in love, you are like a bird without any wings. Now, I should also add, in this relationship in the past between student and teacher, this spiritual companionship, there was a lot of love, commitment, dedication by the teacher for the student, and love by the student for the teacher. I love this story of this student who used to live with the master, and before dawn prayers, that's called Fajr prayers, when Muslims get up and pray before dawn, because it was wintry, the student would get up an hour earlier and warm up the water. So it was more convenient for the master. It was warm water to do the ablutions, to clean yourself, to purify yourself before prayers. But one particular day or morning, he got up late. And the student was so sad because he loved his master so much. And he took the pot of water and he put it next to his heart. So, dear heart, I'm so sorry that I could not get up in time. And then when he gave the water to the master, and the master, when the prayer was over, said to the student, wow, you warmed up the water so much, it almost burnt me. And then he realized it was the warmth, the heat of his heart that had really warmed the waters. So, my friends, today I want to say, and this is an evolving situation, if we ask, what is spiritual companionship today? It has to be different. The aspiration is to have as little hierarchy as possible. But what exactly is spiritual companionship in the 21st century? We don't know. It is evolving. But what I find very interesting as I work with people who are engaged in a full-time profession of spiritual companionship, spiritual direction, we're really following the guidelines of the sages of the past. So I wrote on a very beautiful insight by Rumi, who described spiritual companionship. He said this is how it would evolve. and I wrote it down. He says, stay with friends who support you. Stay with friends who support you. Talk with them about sacred texts and how you're doing. And keep your practices together. So let's take the first line. Stay with friends who support you. You know, in every tradition, it is said, can you find people in your life, and this is what constitutes the circle of love, who pass through three gateways. The gateway of love, there has to be love, affection between the teacher or the, in this case, non-hierarchical spiritual companions. First gateway is love. Second gateway is trust. Is there trust? Because without trust, there's no possibility of being able to be vulnerable. And without vulnerability, there is no authentic spiritual companionship. And the third one, also found in all the traditions, is a love of truth. You know, every tradition has it. The Buddha, you know, he surprised his congregation and he said, this is what really is the key to determining the pace of your enlightenment. He said, find friends who love the truth. The second line, talk with them about sacred texts. Can you get together with these friends and, you know, glean wisdom from the sacred texts? And how you're doing, can you share your joys, your sorrows? And as this is being shared, are you really listening? And what is listening? I love Rumi's definition of listening. He says, metaphorically, you're putting your head on the person's chest and sinking into the answer. And then keep your practices, the last line is, keep your practices together. Can you get together with friends and do practices? Silence. There's no such thing as Jewish silence, Muslim silence, Christian silence, Hindu silence, just silence. Silence in community. Can you share practices of forgiveness, controlling your anger, being more patient? So that's one key of this evolving new spiritual companionship. The other one, actually foretold by Rumi, is he said, eventually connect with friends with whom the friendship, the companionship is based not on outer similarities, but inner similarities. Go beyond religion, race, culture, socioeconomic status, gender. And what really binds you in spiritual companionship is that kinship of spirit. There is love, there is trust, there's love of truth. You know, I love that saying by Ibn Khafif. I think he was a 10th century Sufi master. His famous advice was, find someone, this is to find someone who's a spiritual companion, find someone the sight of whom reminds you of God. Find someone the sight of whom reminds you of God, of spirit, of divinity. The awe of whom moves your heart. The awe of whom moves your heart. And is someone who counsels you not with the tongue of words, but with a tongue of deeds. So, my friend, who is it you have in your life, the sight of whom reminds you of something higher than human personality? Call it God. The awe of whom moves your heart, and is someone who counsels you not with a tongue of words, but with a tongue of deeds. And, you know, even in the 13th century, it was said if you have this circle of love, if you have spiritual companions, this will give rise to so many creative solutions to difficulties in your life. So I love the story of the mullah. It's all allegorical, and I hope I get it right. It's a story of our lives where there's a blind man and he's received an invitation to the king's banquet. But he says, alas, I am blind. I cannot find my way to the king's banquet. Then there's somebody else who is lame, who is crippled, also received this invitation to the king's banquet. He says, alas, I'm crippled, I'm lame, I can never make it to the king's banquet. But they have a circle of love, a spiritual companionship with others. And the mullah says, but blind man, your legs are strong. And lame man, your eyes are good. So I tell you what, lame man, why don't you get on the back of the blind person and let his strong legs be directed by your strong eyes. So by them joining together, the lame man piggybacking on the blind man, they made it to the king's banquet. The point is, allegorically, all of us, in some way or the other, are crippled, are blind, and we are stuck by our shortcomings. But if we join together in spiritual companionship, support and collaborate with the other in spiritual companionship, we can make our way to the king's banquet. Okay, I'll slowly bring it to an end. I'm watching my time here very carefully. In our community, we value very much people getting together and creating these small circles of love. Because this is what the great masters have said. I just want to quote Thich Nhat Hanh, who says, the next Buddha or the next Messiah is not going to be a person, most probably. It is going to be a community that is rooted in loving kindness, in caring, in love, in service to the others. So I encourage all of us to get together and find these companions that pass the gateways of love, of trust, of aspiration for the truth. And that is based not on outer similarities, but on inner similarities. And that join together to serve the common good. We can become a lamp, a lifeboat, or a ladder. I would dare to suggest we have groups in our community doing that right here in the Interfaith Community Sanctuary. I would suggest humbly that the Interfaith Amigos are a good model. Where we got together when my hair was black many years ago. We became very good friends. We practiced sharing 3 cups of tea. What are those 3 cups of tea? Listen, respect, connect. Over the decades, we have had mutual education about our religions. And we all agree that so many of our disputes are simply rooted in illusion and vanity. Together, we have written 3 books. Initially, our stage of being competitive with each other, being guarded about Are we getting enough representation of Islam, Christianity, Judaism? Has really expanded into a joyfulness of collaboration and cooperation as we have got to know one another. We have become vulnerable with each other. Our families have gotten together, our congregations. And we're able to truly share our joys, our sorrows. And we have written 3 books together. We jokingly say that Ted writes the first word, I write the second, Don the third. How could you write a book, 3 of us? It's really because we have almost become spiritual companions. And this is happening all over the country. Not long ago, when we went to New York, we met these 3 ladies. One was a Christian, a Jew, and a Muslim. And they said, let's be doing things together. The Muslim woman wears a hijab. The Christian lady has a big cross to identify herself as a Christian. The Jewish lady has a Star of David, in fact, wears a kippah. And they want to be seen going into restaurants, coffee shops, events, programs, to demonstrate, to illustrate the unity between the religions. But what has happened is, over the days and weeks and months, as they have done this companionship, they have begun to enjoy so much each other's company. They don't do it now just to demonstrate this spiritual unity. They do it because they enjoy it so much. So I really wish we would all also do that, keeping those gateways, keeping those insights in mind. And very quickly, spiritual companionship is also about companionship with animals. The Quran says, animals are communities just like your own. Can I really be conscious of the treatment of animals in slaughterhouses, laboratories, zoos, other places? And lastly, spiritual companionship with nature. The Quran says there's signs of God in nature. Sufi masters say the most holy of holy manuscripts is actually nature. If you have a relationship with nature, and many of you do that, spending time in nature, you begin to learn from nature. Nature has every single possible spiritual teaching. Rumi, he would meditate on a blade of grass. I love his utterance. Grass agrees to die and rise up again so you can receive a little of the animal's enthusiasm. I love Hafiz's poetry when he says, the earth would die. The earth would die if the sun stopped kissing her. But even after all this time, the sun never tells the earth, hey, you owe me. And what happens with a love like that? It lights up the entire sky. We talk about diversity. The Sufi masters say, look at a tree. Look at a tree. The branches, they're swaying differently in the wind, but they're all connected at the roots. About joys and about sorrows. You know, the great masters say, have you noticed that fruits never grow on the trunk of trees? They grow on the branches because they need to quiver and tremble in the breeze to receive the blush of the beloved. There's something beautiful you can get from sorrows, but of course, again, the great masters tell us, don't run towards sorrow and suffering, just don't run away from them. I learned so much from this meditation about overcoming this sense of exclusivity. And the teachers told me, or gave me this metaphor to meditate on. All the rivers flow into the ocean. All the rivers flow into the ocean. Jamal, you might be following one river, but please don't mistake the river for the ocean. Just that understanding, by observing nature, we can learn so much. So spiritual companionship with nature. And I keep on saying my ending is longer than my whole talk, but I do want to say, if you don't have spiritual companionships or companions in your life, please do the meditation of meeting your inner circle of love, which simply means as you close your eyes, you go into your sacred sanctuary, you summon your inner circle of love, which could be beings from any dimension, and your only limitation is your belief system. People living or deceased, animals living or deceased, angelic beings, biblical beings, elements of nature, imaginary beings, Merlin the magician, and just be there as you summon them and simply bask in the love they have for you. Just this much. Simply allow yourself to receive the love they have for you. They are your spiritual companions. It is in their nature to love you. With that, my friends, I'll request you to just gently close your eyes. And focus on your nostril. And simply be present with your breath as you inhale and as you exhale. Just this much.